Well, happy Monday and welcome back to Theo Faith. We are in 1 Corinthians chapter 16 today, so we'll be finishing up this important book and moving on to 2 Corinthians starting tomorrow. Thanks so much for the contributions that have come in. I've used some of that money to upgrade the camera equipment, and so I appreciate that, and I'll be experimenting with it. I know it's a little bit irritating to see my monitors in my glasses, but I'm blind as a bat, so I can't take them off. I have to figure out what to do with that. Also invested in some logos. So you'll see on the website and the YouTube channel some additional branding and things. So thanks so much for your contributions and upping my game. So here we are, 1 Corinthians 16. As you recall, when we started the book, it's divided into three sections, or two sections. One section was the letters from Chloe, and then the other was the responding to a letter from the church in Corinth. And we're still in that last section, and Paul is just finishing up, tying up some loose ends here. And I've divided this chapter into three parts. One is the collection in verses 1 through 4. And the intention, verses 5 through 11, and then finally the instruction in verses 12 through 21. So collection, intention, and instruction is how this chapter lays out. As you go through the reading today, you'll notice in the collection section that there's another collection is being taken up for from the Gentile churches for the church in Judea, or the Jerusalem church. The church there is, as far as we know, was having a famine, had to import food. They were, of course, had to buy the food. May also be some anti-Christian backlash that's happening as well, that's affecting them economically. So Paul is being very careful on collecting money from the Gentile churches to take it to and give it to the church in Jerusalem. Of course, at that time they had to carry gold or silver, so there was no American Express checks that they could buy, no traveler's checks. Couldn't make a deposit in their account remotely like we could do today, so he's being very careful how he's handling that money. A couple principles here I think that are important to observe. One principle, talked about this before, and the basis for it is in Romans 15:27, is that you give materially where you are blessed spiritually. Paul says that they actually owed them because of the gospel came from Jerusalem, so the Gentile churches owed them to contribute financially. So you give financially where you're blessed spiritually is the kind of the rule for giving in the New Testament. Pray that you give to your church. Encourage you to do that, especially if your church is preaching the Bible, preaching the Word. If you're participating in other ministries, try to support them as well. And I, again, appreciate the support that you've shown me here at Theo Faith. Another principle is kind of transparency regarding currency. So we have you give spiritually, materially where you're blessed spiritually, and transparency regarding currency. And you'll see in these few verses here that Paul is being very careful to not only explain how that money is going to be used, but also talks about his involvement with the money. Move into the intention area in verses 5 through 11. Paul says he's going to visit from Ephesus, so he's writing this letter from the church in Ephesus. His intention is to visit the church in Corinth after Pentecost, and then he'll travel from the church in Corinth to Judea after an extended stay there. He's also telling them that Timothy is coming, so he asks them to prepare for the coming of Timothy. Paul had two companions that he mentioned frequently. One was Timothy, one was Titus, and they have books named after them, 1 Timothy, 2 Timothy, and Titus. Be good for you to do a character study. These two servants worked with Paul, assistants with him. Get a concordance, look up where they're named, and just simply make a list of everything you can find out about their lives. One of the interesting things I found, and maybe you can confirm that, is that it seems like Titus got the more difficult jobs. Looks like Timothy wasn't slacking, I wouldn't say that, but it certainly seems like when there were difficult circumstances that needed to be dealt with, seems like it was Titus that was sent. Finally, in 12 through 21 of chapter 16, we see the instructions that Paul has. Several people that he is addressing here by name. Excuse me. And Paul is, not a lone ranger. He's got a group of people around him. I think I've told you before. I've counted up to 70 people. I think 14 of them were women that Paul worked closely with in his ministry. That's only just from his epistles. I still have a task to go and dig that out of the book of Acts. But he asked that Apollos be expected later, that Apollos was going to be coming, and that the whole church, everyone, be watchful, stand firm. Tells them to act like men. That's kind of a politically incorrect statement today, but he's telling that to the whole church. And by that, if you do some investigation on that phrase, you'll find out that what it means is to be proactive, to do the right thing and be proactive doing it. Don't calculate, don't hesitate, but move out and be an example, be a man, do the right thing, be strong, and of course, with all these things, seasoned by love. It's interesting. Love isn't an add-on. Love is something that is, it's like an ingredient in a dish. I like to make spicy food. I made chili last week, and I put chili powder in the chili. Well, if I put too much chili powder in there, I can't separate it out, right? So if you got too many onions or too many green peppers, you can maybe pick them out, but you can't with chili pepper. It just becomes an intrinsic part of the dish. I think that's the idea with love as well. It's supposed to be an intrinsic part of the dish, of the strength, being a man, being proactive. It's all seasoned with love. Seasoning in there is love, and it can't be separated. It characterizes everything. Talks about the household of Stephanas. I've done a little investigation. I really myself haven't come to the conclusion whether this is Stephanas's home or this is the church that's meeting in his house. Paul frequently says, the church that meets in their house. He's going to talk about Aquila and Priscilla as well and mention their church. But Stephanas, he says that they are exemplary. That household is exemplary. They are worthy of being followed. Wouldn't it be great to have an apostle say that about us? And then he mentions three people, Stephanas, Fortunatus, and Archias, and they seem to be heading to Corinth. He's asked to welcome them and recognize them when they get there. It's about a 350-mile journey from Ephesus to Corinth, and pretty significant journey for someone who's in the first century. It's kind of amazing to me how much these guys traveled. And then Aquila and Priscilla, a husband-wife team, the dynamic duo in ministry, helping Paul. They had been kicked out of Rome, traveled to Corinth. They hooked up with Paul in Corinth. They had in common that they were both tent makers. And Paul and Aquila and Priscilla went to Ephesus, and it turns out that Aquila and Priscilla started a church in their home, and Paul was leading that church. So this is the church in Ephesus. Very interesting. Another couple of people that you could trace just to do a biographical study on your own. So that's what we have today. Just in closing, well mentioned, I read last week that the American Bible Society is releasing their annual report. They release a few chapters at a time, month by month. The initial chapters were very encouraging, that over the last year, Bible reading has been up. People are reading more regularly, and I'm really happy to see that. You know, my passion in this ministry is to get you into the Word. To get you reading the Word yourself, interacting with it, and making a regular habit about that. So I'm so happy to see, and it'll change your life. It's changing lives of people all around the world. So God bless you, brothers and sisters, and enjoy your reading this morning, and looking forward to a great week in the Word.